What did Charlie find out? Charlie found something out. That's it, guys. Charlie found something out, and it cost him his life. That's the truth. Okay? Charlie knew something. And whatever it is big and it is ugly. And deep down, I think we know what it is. I think we all kind of know what it is. I don't even know what to say. I don't even know what to say.
Breaking news, because what is happening right now between Candace Owens, Charlie Kirk, and people connected to Turning Point USA has social media asking questions that nobody expected to be asking just a few months ago. And here's the thing. This is no longer just another online disagreement. What started as public criticism has evolved into a much bigger controversy, with competing claims, public statements, and a growing battle over who is telling the truth. Candace Owens has been making allegations and raising questions about events behind the scenes, and those comments have triggered an explosion of reactions across X, YouTube, and political media. Supporters say she is exposing information that deserves scrutiny. Critics argue that serious claims require serious evidence. Either way, the internet cannot stop talking about it. But here's where things get interesting. Many viewers believe the real story is not any single accusation. The real story may be the growing divide between former allies who once appeared to be on the same side. Every new statement seems to create more questions than answers. Every response generates another wave of speculation. And every day, social media users are digging through old interviews, old posts, and old relationships looking for clues. Now, to be absolutely clear, many of the claims circulating online remain disputed, and not all allegations have been independently verified. But that has not stopped the debate from escalating. So what exactly is being claimed? Why are people suddenly revisiting years of history? And what is the unexpected detail that has everyone arguing over what really happened behind closed doors? Let's get into it. The more people looked into this controversy, the more confusing the situation seemed to become. What started as a public disagreement between high-profile conservative personalities was quickly turning into a story that had social media investigators working overtime. Everywhere you looked, people were posting theories, sharing clips, and debating what was really happening behind the scenes. And at the center of the storm was a series of claims and counterclaims that had everyone asking the same question. How did things escalate this far? For many viewers, the first major surprise was not the allegations themselves. It was the fact that individuals who were once seen as political allies were now publicly challenging each other. Fans who had followed these personalities for years were suddenly watching a very different story unfold. Instead of presenting a united front, prominent figures were questioning narratives, responding to criticism, and addressing accusations in front of massive online audiences. As clips began circulating across social media platforms, supporters on every side rushed to defend their preferred voices. Some people argued that difficult questions deserved answers, regardless of who was asking them. Others believed that public accusations without complete evidence could create confusion and unnecessary controversy. The result was a debate that seemed to grow larger every day. Then another twist entered the conversation. Online commentators started revisiting older interviews, podcast appearances, and public statements. Suddenly, comments that had once received little attention were being analyzed frame by frame. Social media users claimed they had discovered inconsistencies. Critics pushed back and argued that people were reading too much into isolated moments. Once again, nobody could agree on what the evidence actually showed. What made the story even more explosive was the speed at which information traveled. A single post could generate thousands of reactions within minutes. A short video clip could spark hours of debate. Entire discussion threads were dedicated to analyzing statements and searching for context. In some cases, viewers believed they had uncovered important details. In others, people pointed out that viral claims often spread much faster than verified information. As the discussion intensified, many observers began focusing on the broader conflict rather than any single allegation. To them, the story was becoming less about one specific claim and more about a growing power struggle inside a highly visible political media ecosystem. Whether that interpretation was accurate remained open to debate, but it was becoming increasingly popular among online commentators. Meanwhile, supporters of Candace Owens argued that she was asking questions that others were unwilling to ask. They pointed to her public statements and claimed she was challenging powerful figures. Critics disagreed and argued that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. The disagreement created a situation where every new statement immediately became front-page discussion across social media. At the same time, defenders of Charlie Kirk and those associated with Turning Point USA argued that many online narratives were being driven by speculation rather than established facts. They warned viewers against accepting rumors without verification and encouraged people to examine primary sources whenever possible. Their supporters echoed those concerns, creating an even deeper divide within the online conversation. The result was a digital battlefield. Hashtags began trending. Reaction videos appeared everywhere. Comment sections turned into arguments that stretched for thousands of replies. Some users insisted major revelations were right around the corner. Others predicted that the controversy would eventually fade once emotions cooled. But regardless of which side people supported, almost everyone agreed on one thing: this story was far from over. Then came another development that caught people's attention. Several commentators began suggesting that the most important details might not be the ones dominating headlines. According to some observers, the real significance of the controversy could be found in what it revealed about relationships, loyalty, influence, and public trust. These were not confirmed conclusions. They were simply interpretations being shared online. Yet they added another layer of intrigue to an already complicated situation. And that is where things stood. Questions were multiplying faster than answers. Supporters and critics were digging deeper. Every new response seemed to create fresh debate. And while countless theories were circulating across social media, very little had been universally agreed upon. One side claimed important truths were finally coming to light. The other side argued that speculation was being mistaken for fact. But as viewers continued following every update, one thing became impossible to ignore. The controversy was no longer just a headline. It had become a full-scale online battle. And according to many observers, the next round of claims and responses could be even more dramatic than what had already unfolded. As the online battle continued to intensify, something unexpected started happening. The conversation was no longer being driven by official statements alone. Instead, thousands of viewers began acting like investigators, searching through old videos, archived interviews, social media posts, and public appearances looking for anything that might help explain the growing dispute. Every clip seemed to generate a new theory. Every theory created another debate. And with each passing day, the controversy appeared to become even more complicated. One of the biggest reasons the story gained so much attention was the uncertainty surrounding it. People were not simply reacting to confirmed facts. They were reacting to competing narratives. Supporters of different public figures were interpreting the same events in completely different ways. One group would point to a statement and claim it answered important questions. Another group would look at the exact same statement and argue that it raised even more questions. The disagreement itself became part of the story. Across social media, users began creating lengthy discussion threads, attempting to connect various public comments and events. Some observers believed the controversy revealed deeper tensions that had existed for years. Others argued that viewers were overanalyzing routine disagreements and turning them into something much larger than they actually were. Regardless of which interpretation people favored, engagement continued rising. The situation became especially intense whenever a new video clip surfaced online. Within minutes, thousands of people would begin sharing reactions. Some would claim the clip changed everything. Others would insist that it changed nothing. Comment sections quickly filled with arguments, predictions, and competing explanations. The cycle repeated itself over and over again, creating a non-stop stream of discussion. Then another interesting development emerged. Instead of focusing solely on the individuals directly involved, many commentators started discussing the broader implications of the conflict. They asked questions about trust, influence, public accountability, and the challenges that arise when disagreements play out in front of millions of viewers. These conversations often attracted just as much attention as the controversy itself. For many spectators, the most fascinating aspect of the story was the apparent shift in relationships. Public figures who once seemed aligned were now openly disagreeing on important issues. That change prompted viewers to revisit old interviews and appearances, searching for signs that tensions may have existed long before the current dispute became public. Some people believe they found evidence supporting that theory. Others argue that hindsight was causing viewers to see patterns that were never actually there. As speculation continued spreading, some online personalities began offering their own interpretations of events. Videos analyzing the controversy accumulated large audiences. Podcasts devoted entire episodes to discussing the latest developments. Social media influencers shared opinions that generated thousands of reactions. In many cases, the commentary became almost as significant as the original controversy. What made the situation particularly unusual was how quickly narratives could change. A widely accepted theory in the morning could be challenged by new information later in the day. Supporters would adjust their positions. Critics would revise their arguments. New questions would emerge. The constant evolution of the story kept audiences engaged because nobody seemed completely certain about what might happen next. At the same time, some viewers began expressing concern about the growing amount of speculation circulating online. They pointed out that viral discussions can sometimes blur the line between verified information and personal interpretation. Their message was simple: remain cautious, examine evidence carefully, and avoid jumping to conclusions before all the facts are available. While not everyone agreed with that perspective, it became an increasingly common theme in discussions surrounding the controversy. Despite those warnings, public interest showed no signs of slowing down. The reason was simple. Every major controversy reaches a point where audiences stop focusing only on what happened and start focusing on what might happen next. That is exactly where this story appeared to be heading. People were no longer discussing only past events. They were anticipating future responses, future statements, and future developments. Supporters on all sides seemed convinced that a major turning point was approaching. Some believed additional information would eventually strengthen existing claims. Others expected future developments to completely reshape public perception. Nobody could agree on the outcome, but nearly everyone agreed that the story was still unfolding, and that uncertainty continued fueling the conversation. Every interview became important. Every public appearance generated attention. Every statement was analyzed in detail. The audience remained locked in, waiting for the next significant development to arrive. Because at this stage, one thing had become clear. This was no longer just another online disagreement attracting temporary attention. It had evolved into a larger public debate filled with competing narratives, passionate supporters, determined critics, and countless unanswered questions. And according to many observers watching the situation unfold, the next chapter could end up being the most significant one yet. By this point, the controversy had taken on a life of its own. What originally appeared to be a dispute between public figures had transformed into something much larger, something that seemed to pull in commentators, supporters, critics, and casual observers from every corner of the internet. The story was no longer moving in a straight line. Instead, it was branching into dozens of different conversations, each one competing to define what the real issue actually was. One of the biggest reasons people remained glued to the story was the growing gap between what was known and what was being speculated about online. Every day brought new interpretations. Every statement triggered fresh reactions. Some viewers believed the controversy was exposing deeper disagreements that had existed for years. Others argued that the internet was amplifying ordinary conflicts and turning them into something much bigger than reality. Yet despite those differences, everyone seemed to agree on one thing. The attention surrounding the situation was not fading anytime soon. As discussions continued, many social media users began focusing less on individual claims and more on the public responses surrounding them. They watched who responded quickly, who stayed silent, and who seemed determined to avoid the conversation entirely. In the world of online commentary, silence often becomes a story of its own. Some people interpreted it as caution. Others interpreted it as strategy. Still others insisted it meant absolutely nothing. The disagreement only added fuel to an already growing fire. Meanwhile, reaction channels continued producing content at a remarkable pace. New videos appeared daily. Live streams stretched for hours. Podcasts devoted entire segments to analyzing developments. Every creator seemed to have a different theory about what was happening behind the scenes. Viewers bounced from one platform to another searching for answers, hoping someone had discovered the missing piece that would finally make everything make sense. But instead of creating clarity, the constant stream of analysis often created even more confusion. One commentator would present a timeline and claim it changed everything. Another would challenge that timeline and offer a completely different interpretation. Audiences found themselves caught between competing narratives, each presented with confidence and certainty. The result was an environment where speculation traveled almost as fast as verified information. Then another interesting shift started taking place. People began discussing reputation, not just the reputations of the individuals directly involved, but the broader question of how public trust is built and maintained. Some observers argued that credibility becomes most important during moments of controversy. Others believed audiences had already chosen sides long before the current dispute emerged. Whatever the case, public perception was becoming a central theme of the story. Across social media, users debated whether the controversy would have lasting consequences or eventually fade from public attention. Some predicted that future developments would reignite the discussion repeatedly. Others believed audiences would eventually move on to newer stories. Yet every time interest appeared to cool down, another statement, interview, or viral clip seemed to bring the conversation roaring back. What made the situation particularly fascinating was the emotional investment from supporters. For many people, this was no longer simply about facts and arguments. It had become personal. Fans defended their preferred personalities passionately. Critics challenged those defenses just as passionately. The comment sections reflected that divide, with lengthy debates unfolding beneath nearly every post related to the controversy. As weeks passed, another narrative started gaining momentum online. Some observers suggested that the most important questions had not even been answered yet. According to this perspective, the public had spent so much time discussing immediate claims and responses that larger issues were being overlooked. Whether that theory was correct remained uncertain, but it generated considerable discussion among viewers searching for a deeper explanation. At the same time, others urged caution. They reminded audiences that public controversies often evolve rapidly and that early assumptions can prove inaccurate. Their argument was simple: wait for evidence, examine claims carefully, and resist the temptation to treat speculation as fact. While not everyone followed that advice, the reminder highlighted how difficult it can be to separate information from interpretation in a fast-moving online environment. Still, the suspense continued building. Every new interview felt important. Every public appearance attracted attention. Every social media post sparked fresh analysis. Audiences remained convinced that another major development could arrive at any moment. The uncertainty created a sense of anticipation that kept people coming back day after day. And that anticipation may have been the most powerful force driving the story forward. Because regardless of which side people supported, regardless of which interpretation they believed, everyone seemed to be waiting for the same thing. A moment that would provide greater clarity. A statement that would answer lingering questions. A development that would finally shift the conversation in a definitive direction. But as the controversy continued unfolding, one reality became increasingly clear. Instead of becoming simpler, the story was becoming more complex. Instead of resolving existing questions, new developments seemed to create additional ones. And according to many observers following every update, the most significant chapter might still be waiting just around the corner. As the controversy continued dominating online conversations, something became impossible to ignore. The story was no longer being driven by a single statement, a single interview, or even a single disagreement. It had evolved into a much broader debate about influence, loyalty, credibility, and the power of public narratives. Every new reaction seemed to create another layer, and every layer raised a fresh set of questions that audiences could not stop discussing. What made the situation especially fascinating was how different groups were interpreting the exact same events. Supporters of one side believed the controversy revealed important issues that deserved public attention. Critics argued that many online discussions were relying too heavily on assumptions and speculation. Neutral observers found themselves caught in the middle, trying to separate documented facts from the endless stream of opinions circulating across social media. As this debate intensified, content creators continued producing breakdowns of every development. Videos analyzing timelines accumulated hundreds of thousands of views. Podcasts dedicated lengthy segments to discussing possible implications. Commentators debated not only what had happened, but also why it mattered. The audience was no longer simply following a story. Many felt they were watching a larger struggle unfold in real time. Then another pattern started emerging. Instead of focusing entirely on the central figures involved, viewers began examining the reactions of people connected to the broader political and media world. Some personalities chose to comment publicly. Others remained silent. A few attempted to stay neutral while acknowledging the controversy. Each response generated its own discussion. Some people interpreted public statements as significant. Others believed audiences were assigning meaning to routine reactions. The result was an environment where nearly everything became part of the narrative. A short comment could become headline material. A brief appearance on a podcast could spark days of debate. A social media post could trigger countless theories about what might be happening behind the scenes. Whether those theories were accurate or not, they demonstrated just how invested audiences had become in following every development. Meanwhile, another important conversation began gaining traction online. Many observers started asking whether the controversy represented a temporary conflict or something more significant. Some argued that public disagreements between influential figures often fade once attention shifts elsewhere. Others believed this situation reflected deeper divisions that could continue influencing discussions for a long time. That uncertainty kept people engaged. Every few days, a new clip would circulate. Every new clip would generate reactions. Those reactions would lead to additional commentary, which would create even more discussion. The cycle repeated itself again and again. Even viewers who claimed they were tired of hearing about the controversy often found themselves checking for updates whenever something new appeared. At the same time, calls for caution continued growing louder. Some commentators reminded audiences that public disputes frequently produce more speculation than verified information. They encouraged viewers to focus on confirmed statements and avoid treating rumors as established facts. Their message resonated with some people, while others remained more interested in analyzing possibilities and predictions. Still, the central mystery remained unresolved. Many questions that had fueled the controversy from the beginning were still being debated. Supporters believed their preferred interpretations were becoming stronger. Critics remained unconvinced. Independent observers continued searching for clarity. The absence of universal agreement ensured that conversations would continue long after individual headlines disappeared. Perhaps the most remarkable aspect of the entire situation was how quickly it transformed from a niche discussion into a major online story. What may have initially seemed like a disagreement among public figures eventually became a topic discussed across countless platforms. Audiences who normally followed very different subjects suddenly found themselves paying attention to the same controversy. And that level of attention created enormous expectations. Viewers began anticipating major revelations. They expected dramatic responses. They looked for moments that might finally provide definitive answers. Yet with every new development, the story seemed to become more complicated rather than less. Instead of closing chapters, new information often opened entirely new debates. That is why so many people remained locked into the story, not necessarily because they believed they already knew the truth, but because they felt the final picture had not yet emerged. There was a widespread sense that important conversations were still taking place, that additional responses could still arrive, and that future developments might significantly influence public perception. For now, however, the controversy remained exactly what it had become over the previous weeks. A fast-moving, highly debated, deeply polarizing story followed by millions of people with very different perspectives. Some viewers believed major questions had already been answered. Others believed the biggest questions were only beginning to be asked. And as audiences continued refreshing timelines, watching interviews and debating every new update, one thing remained clear. The conversation was far from over. The speculation showed no signs of slowing down, and everyone seemed to be waiting for whatever happened next. And now the question shifts to you. After everything we've covered, after all the public statements, the online debates, the competing narratives, and the endless speculation, what do you think is really going on? Do you believe this controversy is exposing deeper issues that have been hidden from public view? Or do you think social media has taken a complicated disagreement and turned it into something much bigger than it actually is? That's the question dividing the internet right now. Some viewers believe important questions are finally being asked. Others believe too many people are rushing to conclusions before all the facts are available. And somewhere in the middle are countless observers trying to sort through the noise and determine what is actually true. One thing is certain. This story has sparked a conversation that reaches far beyond a single headline. It has become a debate about trust, influence, public accountability, and the power of online narratives. No matter where you stand, it is clear that people across the internet are paying attention. But the biggest question may still be unanswered. Is this controversy nearing its conclusion? Or are we only seeing the beginning of a much larger story? Because if recent developments have shown us anything, it is that new information can completely change the conversation overnight. A single statement, a single interview, or a single response could send social media into another frenzy. So now we want to hear from you. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. What is your take on everything that has happened so far? Which argument do you find most convincing? And what do you think happens next? If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss the biggest stories, controversies, and internet debates as they unfold. Because trust me, if new developments emerge, we'll be covering every detail. Thank you for watching, stay informed, stay curious, and we'll see you in the next video.